Binance co-founder and former CEO CZ has been sentenced to 4 months in prison. This after pleading guilty to violating the Bank Secrecy Act in November last year. Joining me now to unpack the sentencing and what this means moving forward is Katie Charleston. Katie, thanks so much for joining me on such short notice.
Thank you for having me.
All right, let's get right into it. We've been waiting for this sentencing. CZ, like I said, pled guilty in November last year. Are you surprised he got 4 months?
There, obviously was quite a difference between what the plea agreement was versus what was argued in court by the prosecutors. But even more so, based on the billionaire that he's made himself by avoiding following the laws, it seems like this is a minimal sentence for the crime that's been committed. The judge very much listened to the probation recommendation, went even more lenient, I think, than the probation recommendation. So I think he's focused more on the type of crime versus the cause and effect and how this foreigner basically evaded U.S. law and made himself billions. I think we also need to keep in the back of our mind that there were some sealed documents that were presented to the court that we don't know what was in them, right? They remain confidential. And so I'm sure that had some sort of impact on the judge's ruling.
I wonder if you're able to speculate a little bit for me here. You said there were some sealed documents revealed to the court. In a case like this, what could those have been? Any thoughts, ideas?
It's hard to speculate on these things. I mean, I would be just guessing, but it could be anything from the defendant potentially having some sort of illness that will affect the longevity of his life versus plans he has for the future or things that are pending for him now outside of prison, a new baby, some sort of life event that would have some sort of effect on the judge's position as to whether or not he should remain in jail for long.
So it really could be anything. This is, of course, just speculation. But on that note, his family members were in court today. There were also 161 letters that were written in support for a lenient sentence. How much, in your experience, do letters, does family presence add to a judge looking at you and looking at the facts before them and making a more lenient decision?
I think it can have a great deal of an effect. As a former prosecutor, I've seen these things happen. Obviously, we've seen them publicly in the news as well, but it really can make a difference if there's a lot of support for a defendant versus nobody submitting anything to the courtroom to vouch for the defendant. So here that may have had some impact. I think more or less the judge's position came down to this being more of a white collar crime. If this was an injury to a person type crime or type case, it would definitely have gone differently, I think. But that being said, we do have, again, someone in this case, it's a Canadian resident conducting in the U.S. and evading laws, and I think that really it could have just come down to the judge that this defendant got that allowed for the lenient sentence.
Could the lenient sentence be attributed to the fact that maybe CZ or Binance have said that they didn't know they were evading laws? This notion of there not being any clear regulation in the United States when it comes to trading in crypto. Is that something that you think the judge took into consideration?
I don't, because the judge even mentioned during the sentencing that it bothered him that the defendant was calling this a mistake when he essentially was asking for forgiveness. Look, we're talking about a pretty savvy individual to be able to pull off this type of crime and walk away a billionaire. So, I don't think that would have affected the judge's position as far as sentencing. Also, we're looking at his business is carrying on, right? It may not be in the U.S. now. It looks like there might be some future opportunities depending on if they get their ducks in a row as far as following the law. But we've got a defendant who's set up an organization to make himself billions of dollars and even went to what looks like lengths to make sure the mother of his children was separated out from the criminal activity so she could carry on if he did get in trouble. So I think we're looking at a pretty sophisticated businessman here.
What do you think this means for Binance moving forward? You mentioned that there are still business activities in different parts of the world. Binance has been under regulatory scrutiny from many different jurisdictions for many different years. Do you think that this sentencing will have any bearing on how regulators in different countries look at the company?
They may provide continued scrutiny on the business to ensure they're complying with laws. But look, since this has all taken place since November when the plea deal started, Binance has carried on with very little more than a blemish due to this individual. And him stepping down as the head of the company really hasn't swayed investors and users of the cryptocurrency world from doing their trading. And so I don't think it will have much long-term impact on this business, and the $4.3 billion that's paid in sanctions and fines is really a drop in the bucket.
I know 4 months doesn't seem like a very long sentence, but do you think that CZ will serve the full 4 months, or are there any terms around his sentencing that could see him, exit prison before the 4 months is up?
So there's always a potential for a short-term sentence for good behavior. This might be one of those cases. He appears to be doing all that he can to get out of this mess. So if there's a chance, I think he'll find the way.